Tom found himself alone in the middle of the wood, as if he'd awoken from a dream. He ran back to the farm as fast as he could, all the way back, dreading the beating he was sure to get from the farmer. But when he got back to the farm, his luck had changed already. The farmer and his wife had gone to the evening service in the little village church, so there was no one to see Tom as he slipped into the farmhouse, crept through the farm kitchen, tiptoed up the back stairs. By the time the farmer and his wife got back from church, Tom was fast asleep on his straw mattress. Tom woke up at dawn, as usual. Half asleep, he made his way to the stables to groom the cart horse, his first job of the day. But when Tom got to the stall, his mouth fell open with astonishment. Someone had been there before him and groomed that old cart horse till his broad back was gleaming like a polished mahogany sideboard, and plaited coloured ribbons into his mane and tail, so the old horse looked as if he was going to the county show. Yallery Brown, thought Tom, and he ran from the stables down to the bottom of West Field, because unblocking the ditch and mending the broken fence were his next jobs. But when Tom arrived, the ditch was clear, and the fence was so skillfully mended you couldn't tell which part had fallen down. "Yallery Brown!" shouted Tom. "Hello, Tom," said a voice behind him. Tom turned, and there was the little creature squatting on a fence post behind him. Began Tom. "Stop," said Yallery Brown. "How many times must I tell you? I warn you once more, but I can't warn you again. You must never, ever thank me, or all your good luck will turn to the bad." Then Yallery Brown ran away up the field, singing his little song. "Work as you will, you'll never do well. Work as you might, you'll never get nowt, for harm and bad luck, and Yallery Brown, you've let out yourself from under the stone." Next day, and the day after, and the day after that, Tom went out to work to find that all his jobs had been done for him by Yallery Brown, but done so much better than Tom could ever do them. On the next morning, Tom thought to himself, "Why am I getting up? Just to keep Yallery Brown company. My work's done. I could stay here in bed and sleep until noon." So that's what Tom did. And that was Tom's big mistake. Because without Tom, Yallery Brown got bored. So Yallery Brown made himself busy. And instead of just doing Tom's work, he started to wreck the work of the other farm lads. So while Tom's horses were always groomed and gleaming, the horses the other lads had to care for went lame, and their coats were smeared with muck. The fences Tom had to mend were all perfectly patched, but the fences the other lads mended all fell down. Tom's drains and ditches were clear, but the ditches the other lads dug were always choked with weeds and muck and rubbish. It didn't take the other lads long to work out what must be happening. Tom lay in bed every day until noon, and all his jobs were done, but there was never a sign of Tom. Only one word for that: witchcraft. Those lads knew what to do. Next morning, Tom was woken at dawn by a stick hitting him across the shoulders. "Get up, witch boy," shouted a voice. There was another blow across his back, even harder. Tom looked up. The other lads were all around his bed, and they were all waving sticks they'd cut that morning from the rowan tree at the top of West Field. They started chanting, "Witch boy, witch boy." "Stop it," cried Tom. "It's not my fault, it was." But the lads laid into him with their sticks, chanting, "Witch boy, witch boy." Tom rolled off his mattress and fled down the back stairs. Through the farm kitchen he ran, out of the door, across the farmyard. There was only one place he'd be safe: his mother's cottage. But as he reached the long, twisting road that led to the village, Tom looked back. The other farm lads were running from the farmhouse, waving their sticks and chanting, "Witch boy, witch boy, witch boy." Tom knew there was only one way to get to the village, where the lads wouldn't follow him. Without a second thought, Tom plunged into the woods. The lad stopped. They weren't going to follow Tom into the woods. They knew evil lurked in those woods. So much the better. If Tom came to a bad end in the woods, they all agreed. They knew they'd never see Tom again. Tom fled on through the trees, blinded by his tears and the blood which flowed from a large gash on his forehead. Sharp twigs whipped into his eyes and gouged his cheeks. But Tom plunged on until he reached the centre of the woods, the circle of trees and the flat stone slab. Tom fell to the ground, sobbing with pain. He gulped air into his lungs, and as his breath returned, he sat up. He knew who was to blame. He knew what he had to do. "Yallery Brown," he called. "Yallery Brown, I want a word with you." "Here I am, Tom," said a voice behind him. Tom turned. "Ha ha 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 ha!" He laughed, Yallery Brown. "Oh dear, Tom, who's been dragging you through a hedge?" "Don't you laugh at me," said Tom. "This is all your fault. I wish I'd never met you, and I'll thank you never to help me again." There was a sudden silence in the wood. Not a single bird twittered. Not one leaf stirred in the breeze. "What did you say to me?" asked Yallery Brown, very quiet and menacing. "I said, I'll thank you never to help me again," Tom repeated. "Oh dear, Tom," said Yallery Brown. "I warned you never to thank me. Now you have. I must go, Tom. You'll never see me again. By thanking me, Tom, you set me free. That means there's an empty place beneath the stone. I must go now, Tom. But listen, they're coming." Yallery Brown vanished. Tom listened, but all he could hear was a rustling, like the wind in the dry leaves. No, it was more like a pattering, like raindrops falling on dry leaves. It was getting louder, nearer. Then Tom realized it wasn't rain, it was footsteps, hundreds of tiny footsteps running towards him. Tom tried to stand up, but he was grabbed by many tiny hands. Tom tried to pull away, but the tiny hands were too many and too strong. And slowly, Tom was being dragged backwards across the floor of the grove towards the flat stone slab. Tom turned his head, saw the stone slab was raised up. He tried to scream for help, but the terrible darkness crashed down on top of him. In the centre of an old dark wood in Lincolnshire is an ancient grove, and in the centre of that grove is the flat stone slab. Anyone standing in that grove might hear a small voice, like a child's voice, crying, "Help me! Please help me! It's so dark under here, and I'm so frightened. Won't someone please, please help me?" It's the voice of a creature that's been under that stone for 150 years. But no one ever goes into the wood, and no one hears the voice. And it's better that creature stays beneath the stone, crying and wailing, for if it's ever let out, the balance between the worlds would be disturbed once again. And who knows what might happen then, for work as you will, you'll never do well. Work as you might, you'll never get out. For harm and bad luck and Yallery Brown, you've let out yourself from under the stone.